That's great. Thank you very much, Jeff, and apologies for the technical difficulties that we had over there, but looks like we're up and running. So we'll start the presentation in regards to investments and savings in Canada. Again, please post your questions in the chat box as we go, and we'll take a look either on the fly or at the end in order to address any specifics. So yeah, next slide, please. So being a newcomer to Canada, obviously there's a lot of different challenges associated with moving from another country into Canada, and a lot of it comes from the uncertainty of the financial system, how to invest, what to invest, and ensuring that the financial security, how to build financial security in this new country. So 63% say investing or making a financial plan is one of their top challenges. RBC and our team of advisors are here in order to help you. Even the smallest questions can be a stress. We want to make sure that everybody is comfortable with being able to reach out and ask questions, no matter if it's small, medium, or big complex. We're here to assist. Next slide. The best advice is one-on-one advice. The internet, there is a lot of people, a lot of items on the internet that you can research. The ability and accuracy of the information can be different. Something that might be posted that you search 2 years ago is no longer relevant based on the chat or what have you. It is best to consult with somebody in the know who is up to date on changes. As we'll get into the details of investing and savings in Canada, one of those areas that changes quite a bit is our tax laws, and making sure that you understand what those laws are, and making sure that we stay within them to make sure that we don't get penalized or unnecessary interest charges and stuff like that. Next slide, please. So a registered plan versus non-registered plans. And when we say plans, it can mean a variety of different types of investment accounts, okay? So what we're going to be going through is like, what are the differences between registered plans and non-registered plans? What are the financial benefits between a registered plan and a non-registered plan? Take a look at some of the limits and that the government allows you to contribute into these plans, and also just make sure and clarify that the non-registered plans there's no benefits associated with those plans, whereas the registered plans, there's some sort of tax benefit with those plans. So we'll go through all of those, and as mentioned, it is quite broad. The different types of accounts, the different types of plans that we have in Canada, and if there are questions that you want to ask after the presentation, by all means, feel free to ask them, and we'll address them. Next slide, please. So these are the different type of registered plans, and registered plans can just be defined as an account that the Government of Canada and Canada Revenue Agency, and you'll hear me, mention Canada Revenue Agency quite a bit throughout this call. The acronym for Canada Revenue Agency is CRA, so I'll use CRA from this point onwards. These are the type of plans that can benefit from a taxation standpoint, and we'll start going through these different plans. And the different uses for these plans, because not all of them are created equal, and some of them will have, you'll be investing in them for different purposes. Please. So the tax-free savings account, or the TFSA, this plan is designed for medium to long-term investments. And when we're saying medium to long-term investments, it's about 1 year or longer. Anything within a year typically is not the best. The tax-free savings account is not the best investment vehicle. Now, the tax-free savings account, even though it's broadcast or marketed as a savings account, you can hold other investments within it. So the tax-free savings account is an account or a plan that allows you to put money into it and let it grow. And while it grows, whether you have it invested in a GIC, whether it's in stocks, whether it's in bonds, mutual funds, all of those type of investments can be held within a tax-free savings account. It will grow tax-free, meaning that any gains, interest, or dividends that you earn on the tax-free savings account, the government is not going to ask you to declare it as income. And when you don't have to declare it as income, it means you don't have to pay tax on it. So it's a very good account. It's a very good plan in order to use if you have a little bit of a longer term time horizon and you're saving for a medium to long-term goal. So this slide over here just shows the impact if somebody were to make a $5,000 contribution on an annual basis and invest in, let's say, a balanced portfolio, earning 6% annually or on average. If you held it outside of the TFSA, so this is the non-registered account. This is the account that doesn't have any tax benefits to it. If you hold it outside of the tax-free savings account, your $5,000 annual contribution turns out to be $62,000 over a 10-year period because the government is asking you to pay tax on it every single year on your gains. Whereas the tax-free savings account, if you had the exact same investment, but inside the tax-free savings account, you'd be almost at $70,000 worth of contribution and growth. And that's because the government is not taxing any of the dividends, any of the interest, or any of the capital growth that you have during the time that the account is in there. And if you take a look at even a longer term time horizon, $156,000 would be the balance after tax over a 20-year time period, and almost $200,000 if invested within the tax-free savings account. So it's very important to understand and realize that if you are saving for the long term, you don't want any tax implications, that the tax-free savings account is available for you. Now, the only thing with tax-free savings account is that there are limits in which you can contribute. And those limits depend on how long you've been in Canada for. Generally speaking, over the last few years, that the government has allowed you to do $6,000 per year as contribution room. So the best way, and really the only way, to check how much contribution room you have accumulated since coming to Canada is by logging into your Canada Revenue Agency account, your CRA account, and checking to see how much contribution room you have. If it says $12,000, you're able to put $12,000 into a tax-free savings account and invest it in there. Every single year, January, you'll be able to do whatever the government announces for another contribution. So it will accumulate. Any contributions that you have not used will be carried forward. So if you haven't used a tax-free savings account, you've been in Canada for 2 years, $12,000 would be carried forward. 2022, January 2022, you receive another $6,000 worth of contribution room. So that means that you'd have a total of $18,000 that you'd be able to put into your tax-free savings account and let grow from that point onwards. Next slide, please. So if you have a temporary residency status, the tax-free savings account is available to you. And again, I mentioned about how to check your contribution limit. You do not want to go over your contribution limit, because if you do, the government is going to penalize you and charge you interest on any amount that you have over contributed. So you want to be very, very sure of what your contribution limit is. Also, temporary residents are able to invest in a non-registered account. Again, the non-registered account, it isn't covered. It isn't covered by any tax sheltering, and on an annual basis, your financial institution will send you a notification of how much interest, dividends, and capital gains that you've earned on that account, and you will have to submit it with your taxes as income. And if you're, depending on what income tax bracket you're in, you'll have to pay tax on those gains. Now, for a permanent resident, not only do you have tax-free savings account and non-registered account available to you, there's two more registered accounts that show up in this box, which is the RESP and the RRSP. The RESP is an education savings plan, which you can use for your kids or your grandkids. And basically what the RESP does is that you can put money into that particular account, invest it, and the government is going to match up to 20% of what you put in to a maximum amount of $2,500 contribution. Meaning, if you put $2,500 into an RESP with one of your kids as a beneficiary, the government will turn around and give you $500 to put into that account as well. The catch with this particular account is that when you take money out, especially any growth or any grant, so that $500, that it has to be used for, the child has to be enrolled in post-secondary education. So it will accumulate over the years, and then the purpose for that particular account is that when your child goes to college or university, the funds are there in order to withdraw, in order to help with tuition, housing, transportation, anything associated with with ensuring further education after high school. So the RESP is designated for education. The RSP is dedicated for retirement, primarily retirement. There's a couple of different things that you can use the RSP for other things in regards to withdrawals, but primarily the RSP is used for retirement savings. And generally speaking, you do not want to put money into an RSP unless you are pretty confident that you're not going to need it until you retire. So next slide, please. So taking a closer look at RSPs, the amount of the efficiency with an RSP is the fact that when you put money into an RSP, you're actually reducing your taxes and possibly getting a return when you file your taxes in that particular calendar year. So as an example, if somebody's earning $40,000 worth of annual income, you're going to have to claim $40,000 worth of taxable income, and you will have to pay the amount of money associated with a $40,000 income. Now, I just have my tax table over here. In this particular circumstance, the government would be looking at collecting approximately $5,600 with somebody earning a $40,000 income. Now, that tax typically gets taken off of each paycheck. So you don't have to, typically you don't have to worry about, holding that back and then paying the government later. Your employer typically will deduct that amount, per pay and forward it to Canada Revenue Agency, CRA, on your behalf. So you're not stuck with a big bill at the end of the year. So while they're doing that, if you have contributed $5,000 to an RSP, you're going to receive a $5,000 RSP receipt, a contribution receipt. That $5,000 contribution receipt, when you file your taxes, essentially tells the government that you're only going to pay tax on $35,000 worth of income. $35,000 worth of income is down to approximately $4,500. So in that particular circumstance, you're looking at about $1,000 in tax savings if you had made an RSP contribution in this particular scenario. So again, that $5,000 will go into the RSP. You invest it. It's earmarked for retirement, because the last thing that you want to do is take money out of the RSP while you're working. Because although you saved $1,000 approximately in taxes, if you were to take the money out of the RSP while you're still working, you're going to get taxed $1,000 on that withdrawal. So the purpose of the RSP is to save tax now, let it grow over time, and then when you stop earning your employment income is when you'll start taking money out of your RSP at a lower tax rate than when you were earning an income. So it grows tax-free from now until you retire, and that is the whole purpose of the RSP and the registered plan. Next question, please, or next slide, please. So I may have answered some of the questions over here, but it's getting towards lunchtime, so we thought we'd show you a sandwich over here, a delicious sandwich. But actually, this has more purpose than just getting you hungry for lunch. The registered plan can be looked at like a sandwich, the bread being the type of plan it is. Now, inside that sandwich or inside that plan, you can have different things. And I mentioned the same thing with the tax-free savings account. You can put money in and let it sit in savings, but you're not going to earn all that much money. But you have the option, both within the tax-free savings and the RSP, to invest in things like guaranteed investment certificates, stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So depending on your risk tolerance, depending on your timeline, we would be able to assist you with making those decisions about what to invest inside your registered plans and making sure that the investment is in line with what your goals are. Slide, please. So when we take a look at when putting things and putting investments inside the your registered plans or any type of investment is risk tolerance, and making sure that the risk that of the investment matches your risk tolerance and your comfort level, and also making sure that over the long term that it's growing for you, it's having a positive effect. One of the things that RBC really suggests doing is diversifying, meaning that don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't buy one particular stock. Don't buy one particular sector. As you can see, there are many different sectors that we have access to, and not all of them return at the same amount. We see that the equities, which is the stock side of things, typically have a higher rate of return during good periods of time and a low rate of return during rough periods of time. But then there's other asset classes, such as bonds, that might take over during the time that the stock market is not doing as well. So working with an advisor and having a one-on-one conversation, we assist clients in order to make sure that the amount of bonds and the amount of stocks and the different things that are available for investment are put into the portfolio and are in line with what your comfort level is and with what your goals are. Next slide, please. So these three key investing principles are very important. They seem very simple, and they are. investing does not have to be complicated. You know, starting early, investing regularly, and diversifying your investment are the three factors that we promote and that we've obviously seen through time create wealth for our clients and create stability for their financial planning and longer term goals. So from an investing early standpoint, maybe move to the next slide. Okay, sorry. So back up. I thought there was one other one over there. My apologies. So from an investing early standpoint, what we always recommend, no matter where in your life stage that you are, is try to put something in on a regular basis, even if it's something small. Our plans, at least at RBC, have a minimum $25 pre-authorized contribution, so something that can happen automatically. And typically, we recommend lining it up with a payday. So your paycheck comes into your checking account, and you know that day your contribution to a tax-free savings account or non-registered plan, or even if it's just a basic savings account, in order to accumulate some emergency funds, would be the recommendation. What we find is once you pay yourself first, then all of the rest of the expenses kind of comes out of that. And if your cash flow and your expenses get used to having that piece come out before the expenses do, as your wage increases, as you receive bonuses, you know, if there's any other increase to your income, you'll be able to adjust that that amount upwards in order to you know, continue to add and grow that nest egg, whatever you're looking at saving for. Again, whether it's you know, shorter term or whether it's longer term, we have options for all of that. Investing regularly is an ideal situation because as we've seen and you know, have felt over the past couple of years, is that any market, whether it's the stock market or whether it's the bond market, we're seeing movement in the bond market, in the stock market. It goes up, it comes down, it goes up, it comes down. If you invest on a regular basis, it means that if the markets are going down, you're picking up more units or more shares when it's lower, meaning that on the way back up, you're going to benefit more than somebody who just put a lump sum in, you know, at some time in the past. So investing regularly will smooth out a lot of the bumps in the road that we see and provide opportunity in order to grow your money at a better rate of return. Just because there's no guesswork as to when to get into the market or when to get out of the market. And then the other piece, the diversification of your investment, is very important as well. As the previous slide showed, there are so many different areas that we can invest in that that having a broad exposure to all of these different types of investment is going to, number one, smooth out the volatility. So you're not going to go on as big a roller coaster as somebody who has invested in just one sector or one stock or what have you. So it creates for an overall better investment experience. Next slide, please. So circling back to the, you know, to the purpose and what we're here, you know, why we're doing these presentations is in order to provide support when there's uncertainty. If you have uncertainty associated with, you know, what type of investment or wanting to invest or developing a financial plan, some projections, please reach out to us, whether it's, you know, through means of virtually or our large branch network. Connect with us, sit down, let's have a conversation, let's answer your questions, and make sure that the stressful piece of the financial planning and the stressful piece about investing in Canada subsides a little bit, and making sure that you have peace of mind that, that you're doing the right things. If you've already started something, congratulations. If you're not 100% sure if it's the right thing that you've been getting yourself, started with, then let us know. We're here in order to assist. We can help you choose the right investments, create an investment plan, grow your money faster, smoother, and we can also make adjustments to the plan. And, lastly, but certainly not least, is we want to make sure that you're reaching your goals in Canada. We don't want to have you looking back 5 years, 10 years down the road saying, I should have done this or I should have done that, just because you didn't ask the questions. By all means, please reach out to us and let us have a conversation and address any questions that you do have. Speaking of questions, that's the end of the of my piece over here, but would love to take the next little bit and go through some questions that have been coming up on the chat box over here.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much, Julian. So sorry that I had some internet tech issue at the beginning, but I'm here finally. Thank you so much for the great presentation. You explained the RRSP and tax-free savings account very well with the great examples, because we always get this question a lot, that should I open tax-free, should I open RRSP, what are the differences, and you explained it very well with the great examples. And thank you so much for bringing up the 3 key investing principles, like as you said about the diversification, do not put all of your eggs in one basket, which is really true, very well said. And also about the how we need to all start invest early, and it's never been late to start investing. So thank you so much again for the great presentation, and I'm so impressed already by everyone's questions. So see, so many great questions in the chat box. So let's get to the questions. So I also see some questions in the chat, but if you can just enter your question in the Q&A, it would be great. So let's start with the first one. Very great question about the tax-free saving account. So does tax-free saving account vary from institution to institution? Like, is it like from probably banks to banks? And do we need to have a bank account to open a TFSA in a particular institution?
Perfect, great question. So the first part of the question was whether or not the tax-free savings accounts are different within the different institutions. The concept of the tax-free savings account is the same. So you'll go into a financial institution, they'll open up a tax-free savings account, and it's just a shell account. Where the difference comes into play is what a financial institution is offering in order to put into a tax-free savings account. So I'll give you an example. RBC has a selection of mutual funds. So we have the ability to take a look at mutual funds, stocks, bonds, and GIC. So all of those are opportunities that we can offer our clients to put into the tax-free savings account. Other financial institutions will probably have the same, but they might differ a little bit because their institution is the one that's running the mutual fund, or their advisors are recommending different stocks or different bonds. So the tax-free savings account concept is the same. It's what you put in and what you invest in will be different from financial institution to financial institution. And no, you do not need a basic account like a checking account or a savings account in order to open up a tax-free savings account. Tax-free savings account can be opened as a standalone account and product.
Awesome, exactly. So you really don't need to have like a checking account. So you can just open the tax-free savings account and you can easily top up the TFSA. Perfect. So we have another great question from Surab again. So does RRSP can be used only for kids' education? Can it be used for self-education as well?
It is only for minor children at this point in time. So the beneficiaries have to be under the age of 17 in order to qualify for the grant.
Perfect. So next question. So is there any similar option to the TFSA to save without getting interest? And I guess is another question. So because the contribution to TFSA will be after tax deduction or before, and how tax will be calculated if I withdraw some amount, after a few years, for example.
Perfect. Yeah, there are no other products as flexible as a tax-free savings account when it comes to tax sheltering and accessibility. Accessibility being able to make a withdrawal out without any tax implications. And that leads me to, the second part of the question is when you're taking money out of the RRSP, out of the tax-free savings account, the TFSA, down the road, you don't have to report any increases, any dividends, or any interest. So it truly is, while it's in the tax-free savings account, the money will grow tax-free. When you take the money out of the tax-free savings account, you don't have to report anything as income. So it truly is a tax-free investment.
All right. Thank you so much, Julian, for answering that question. Another question from Lorraine. So I heard that having a pension plan at work can affect the RRSP contribution rule. Is this correct? And can you please provide some input on pension plans and RRSP?
Absolutely. Good question. And the short answer is yes. If you do have a pension plan through your employer, it will have an impact on the amount of your contribution room. So RRSP contribution room is calculated based on your earned income. So the percentage is 18%. So if you earn a certain amount of income, when you file your taxes, CRA is going to do a calculation and say 18% of that value can be used for future contribution room. So what happens with a pension is that because the pension is a benefit and it grows tax-free similar to an RSP, but it's just managed by the employer, you're going to see what's called a pension adjustment when you receive your notice of assessment, your T4. So your T4 is what you receive from your employer on an annual basis, showing how much you made, how much they deducted in taxes, and how much may have gone into a pension, among other things. The amount that went into the pension is going to be the amount that reduces the amount of contribution room that you have. So generally speaking, depending on the type of pension, anywhere from maybe about 5% to 10% would be the amount that you could expect to be your RSP contribution reduced by. So if you're at 18%, the contribution room, and there's 10% that's being eaten up by the pension, it still leaves you an 8% of your salary for contribution room. And that's all calculated and summarized on your notice of assessment. Your notice of assessment is the tax form that you're going to receive after each year that you file taxes in Canada. It's very, very clear on how much you're able to contribute. So good question with the pension. Does have an impact on your contribution room, but for the right reasons.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was a great question. So another question. So I'm so impressed by this one as well. I'm 20 and have immigrant parents who have no idea about investing, but I want to start from now. That's what all about the 3 key principles, right? To start early. So where is a good place to start? I have no idea how stocks work or bond, mutual fund, or is there any helpful resources?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll type it in here. Let's see. So RBC Global Asset Management is our website associated with a lot of our investing, and I know I see a few other people asking about where do we find information. What's a good bond, stocks, mutual fund, and what have you. RBC Global Asset Management has a lot of information on there in order to upskill. So understanding the principles of the mutual fund, of bonds, of stocks, There's a lot of information from an educational standpoint on that website over there that will answer a lot of those questions. But as I've said throughout the presentation, probably the best way to get started is to book, a 15 half-an-hour WebEx or visit a branch in order to speak with somebody, because a few questions that we're able to ask will point you into the right direction, because as previously mentioned, there's a lot of information out there, and not all of it might be relevant to, somebody who's 20-year-old and wants to get started. A lot of it might not be relevant to, grandparents who are just about to retire or are retired. But having that quick conversation, getting a sense and overview of what might be best suited or which direction to go when it comes to educational materials and learning more about it, definitely recommend having a conversation with one of our advisors.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Another question from Hamdi. As a newcomer carrying an amount like higher than 50K, what would be the first advice to manage this amount in a bank?
Yeah, so good question, and there's quite a bit of different answers to that. But one of the things that I would recommend is figuring out what the goal of that $50,000 is. If it's for emergency, keeping it liquid, using a savings account like a regular savings account or a cashable GIC, guaranteed investment certificate, would be the recommendation, because you'd earn a little bit of money on it, earn some interest on it, but it's there and accessible to you if you need it. You don't want to be locking things up, or you don't want to be exposing yourself to risk if it's going to be if it might be used over the short term, because you just can't predict what's going to happen in the markets, whether it's the stock market or the bond market in the short term. So until you get a sense of exactly, what the timeline is and what you're going to need those funds for, I'd recommend a savings account or a non-registered GIC, so you have quick access to it, and you can make a change, to it once you figure out what you might need that for.
Awesome, thank you so much. And as you always said, the best advice is a one-on-one advice, right? Because if every person's situations are different, so you also can reach out to Julian if you need like a one-on-one advice. Perfect. So I see still so many questions coming in, and let's just pick the more general questions. So I saw one great question about the limit. So someone wants to know that our contribution only count towards the TFSA or RRSP limit. What about the capital gains? Like the capital gains are outside the limit. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. You only have to pay attention to the money that you're putting into the tax-free savings account. You only have to pay attention to the money that's going into the RSP. Whether you make, $10 or $100,000, it does not affect the contribution limit once you put that money into the account.
Very great question. So Amy, if you can go to the next slide as well, that it has like Julian's information there. So what is the interest rate on the tax-free saving account? Is the interest on the TFSA taxable, and what time in life do you start spending from TFSA and is spending, and is the spending taxable?
Yeah, so the interest rate depends on the type of investment that you invest in within the tax-free savings account. So it can be as low as 0.5% in a GIC, or if you invest in mutual funds that have more stocks and exposure, you can see growth that's into the double digits. So it depends on what you invest in, and again, there's no taxes on any of the gains in the tax-free savings account or when you pull money out of the tax-free savings account.
Perfect. Thank you. And next question, how much do I need to open an RRSP account, please? RRSP
account, technically there is no minimum. You can do up to $2,500 in order to maximize. But if you wanted to do, you know, $25 on a monthly basis, $25 on a monthly basis, you can do that in order to get things started. Start early, right? And invest often. So really, technically, there's no limit, but you want to be making sure you're putting money into it at least in order to get that government grant.
Perfect. So another RESP question, Julian. So how much government makes contribution towards RESP? Is it 20% or 25% of any contribution? And is there any maximum limit for the government contribution?
There is. I think the maximum limit over the life of the plan is $7,200. But the government will only give you 20% up to a contribution of $2,500 per year. Okay. So you can make up for lost years one at a time, but yeah, it's 20% up to $2,500 contribution on an annual basis.
Perfect. And so can we open TFSA without having a CRA account?
I guess technically you can open a TFSA without a CRA account, but I would recommend that you check with CRA to make sure you have limit.
That's correct. Perfect. So, and maybe we can get 2 more questions. I know it's 11:55. So again, about the RRSP limit. So what is the limit in RRSP?
The RRSP, that would depend on each individual. It's not like the tax-free savings account where the government comes up with a generic $6,000 a year. It will depend on your earned income, and it would be 18% of your earned income is the calculation, and that would be you'd be allowed to contribute that for the following year or accumulate it over time.
Perfect. And someone also asking from where can we get information on bonds and mutual funds? And Julian already sent the link through the chat. Right? Okay, perfect. And maybe for the last question, see.
So I see one over here. Can investments in crypto be included in TFSA accounts? At this point in time, no. There are no trading platforms that allow crypto in the tax-free savings account. What we have seen clients do is use ETFs in order to participate, but you also have to be careful because the government sometimes does not allow some ETFs to be invested within the registered accounts.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Julian, for the great presentation, you know, answering most of the questions very patiently. So if you want to have a one-on-one discussion with Julian, please feel free to contact him. There is a phone number and email on the screen, or you can easily scan the QR code. Thank you so much, Julian, for your ongoing support of Meeting Place. So we're so fortunate to have you here today, and thank you all for your you know, investing your time in learning something new. So to wrap it up perfectly, I hand it over to Amy.